Hello children, we're now going to talk about snails, and I've got some real snails here for you to look at. Okay, look really carefully. I'm going to turn the board around. I have to be careful because I've made it wet so that they will move around and make slime. I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to show you underneath the board of this real snail. Can you see what it looks like underneath? Wow. Lovely. I'm going to put the board down now because it's dripping all over me. Okay. Now, snails, you have to stay on that board while I talk about this book. This book's about snails. Then I'm going to ask you some questions at the end, see if you can remember. So this is a non-fiction book, so it's real. It's about real snails. At the front of the non-fiction book is something called the contents page, and that tells you which number of page you can look for all these things about snails. I'm going to start with this very first page that says, "What are snails?" Snails have a soft body and carry a hard shell. They do not have any legs. Some snails live in water, but in this book we're only going to be looking at snails that live in gardens and woods. That means you might be able to find one in your garden or out on a walk. Listen really carefully because I am going to ask some questions. Just keep an eye on my snails, make sure they don't escape. What do snails look like? Snails have a thick, soft foot. We saw that underneath. And they can pull it into their hard shell. Each ring on the shell is called a whorl. And the soft foot feels damp and slimy. Snails have a mouth under their head. So when I showed you the back of the board, under there, that is where the snail's mouth is. The short feelers on the snail, I wonder if we can have a really close look of the real snail. The short feelers at the very front, there's some very tiny ones at the bottom. Those ones are for touching and smelling. But the longer ones have two tiny little balls on the top, and that's their eyes. Last thing, how are snails born? Snails make a hole in the soil and lay eggs there. They usually lay about 40 eggs at a time, and the eggs are white. After about 21 days, the eggs hatch and the baby snails begin to move. They have little shells and very pale bodies. The last thing I want to tell you about is, what do snails eat? I'm just going to see to this snail here because he's trying to escape and I don't really want him on my table. Snails like to eat leaves or plants which are brown and smelly. If there are no dead leaves, then snails will eat fresh green plants. Okay, there are going to be some questions in the activities for you that might ask you to think about what I told you. So you might need to play the video again. Bye for now.